The church bells tolled softly as the village gathered in the stone-walled churchyard. A grey mist lingered above the rolling Somerset fields, settling on the old graves and the solemn faces of those who came to pay their respects. Amelia Rowe stood beside the oak coffin of her father, Reverend Charles Rowe, her hands trembling though she tried to remain composed. Her father had been a respected vicar, a man known for his kindness and unwavering principles. His sudden passing had left the village in shock, but for Amelia it was not only grief that weighed heavy on her chest. It was the bitter stares from her uncle, Richard Rowe, who stood across the churchyard with his cane tapping the gravel impatiently. When the service ended, Richard approached, his voice low yet sharp. "This house of your father's cannot remain in your hands alone, Amelia. It should be sold. The land is worth far more than you can imagine." Amelia tightened her grip on her black gloves. It was father's wish to keep the house within the family. You know that. Richard's thin lips curled into a bitter smile. Wishes die with the man. The estate will be settled in court, and I will make sure it does not favor you. As Richard walked away, Amelia felt the cold wind cut through her veil. Her young cousin, Thomas, tugged at her sleeve. "Amelia," he whispered, his eyes darting to the coffin, "Father gave me something to pass on to you. He said it would explain everything." From the pocket of his small jacket, Thomas pulled out a heavy silver pocket watch. The chain gleamed even in the muted light of the misty afternoon. Amelia froze, recognizing it instantly. It had never left her father's side. Her heart pounded as she opened the watch slid. Inside, beneath the cracked glass face, lay a folded scrap of paper, sealed tightly as if hidden in haste. She slipped it into her palm, her breath quickening. The church bell tolled once more, echoing across the fields. Amelia looked down at the watch, realizing her father had left her something far more dangerous than a family keepsake. The candlelight flickered against the old stone walls of the rectory that night. Amelia sat alone at her father's oak desk, the silver pocket watch resting before her. The folded scrap of paper she had discovered earlier seemed to burn in her palm. With trembling fingers, she broke the fragile seal and unfolded the message within. The handwriting was her father's, neat yet hurried. "My dearest Amelia, if you are reading this, it means my time has ended sooner than expected. You must know the truth. Your uncle Richard has long deceived this family. He forged documents, drained accounts, and plotted to claim the house that belongs to you. Be wary, for he will not stop until he has taken everything. Trust no one but yourself, and keep this letter safe." Amelia's breath caught. Her father, always careful with his words, would never accuse without certainty. She pressed the paper to her chest, her mind racing with fear and determination. A sudden knock on the heavy front door shattered the silence. She hastily slipped the letter back into the watch and tucked it into her pocket. Crossing the hall, she opened the door to find Inspector Harold Whitcomb standing on the step, his lantern casting long shadows across the porch. "Miss Rowe," he said gravely, "I must speak with you. Questions have been raised regarding your father's passing." Her heart dropped. "Questions?" she repeated faintly. The inspector stepped inside, his boots echoing against the flagstone floor. "Your uncle has filed a statement suggesting your father's death may not have been natural. He insists that certain medicines were mishandled, and that you, being closest to him, may know more than you have said." Amelia gripped the edge of the table to steady herself. Richard's scheme was moving faster than she had imagined. "That is absurd," she whispered, her voice quivering. The inspector regarded her carefully, his sharp eyes glinting in the dim light. "Absurd or not, Miss Rowe, I am required to investigate. Until then, I would ask that you remain within the village." When he left, closing the door with a hollow thud, Amelia leaned back against the wood, her whole body trembling. The letter was now more dangerous than ever. If Richard knew it existed, he would stop at nothing to seize it. Upstairs, Thomas stirred in his sleep, murmuring faintly. Amelia clenched the watch tightly in her hand, realizing she could not trust even the safety of her own home. The wind howled through the hedgerows outside as Amelia struggled to find rest. The inspector's visit had left her shaken, yet her greater fear was Richard. She had locked the watch away in a drawer beside her bed, though she doubted any lock could keep him from what he wanted. Near midnight, a faint creak stirred her from uneasy sleep. She sat upright, holding her breath. The sound had come from the back of the house, near the kitchen door. Slipping out of bed, she pulled on her shawl and lit a candle. The flame trembled in the draught as she crept along the corridor. The old timbers groaned beneath her steps. She paused at the top of the stairs, straining to listen. Another sound reached her ears, soft, deliberate footsteps moving across the flagstones. Amelia's heart thudded. Someone was inside. She descended slowly, her candle casting thin light over the hallway. As she neared the parlor, a shadow darted across the far wall. She gasped and nearly dropped the candle. "Who is there?" Her voice broke the silence, shaking with both fear and defiance. There was no reply. Only the faint scrape of metal as if someone tampered with a lock. She hurried forward and pushed open the parlor door. The cold night air rushed in through the unlatched window, the curtains billowing like ghostly shrouds. The drawer where she had hidden the watch stood ajar. Panic surged within her. She flung it open, empty. The watch was gone. A muffled cry sounded from upstairs. "Thomas." Without a second thought, Amelia raced back up the staircase, the candlelight dancing wildly along the walls. She burst into his room and found the boy trembling in bed, his eyes wide. "There was a man," he whispered, clutching the blanket. "He stood here, watching me. Then he went out." Amelia wrapped her arms around him, her pulse racing. Whoever had entered the house now had the watch, and with it, the letter that could prove her father's warning. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked, followed by the crunch of footsteps fading into the night. Amelia tightened her hold on Thomas, realizing the danger had only just begun. Morning light broke through the curtains, though it brought no comfort. Amelia had not slept. She sat at the kitchen table with a cup of untouched tea, her hands shaking as she tried to gather her thoughts. The watch was gone, and with it the only proof of her father's warning. Thomas came down the stairs slowly, rubbing his eyes. He sat beside her, his face pale. "Amelia, will that man come back?" he whispered. She forced a smile, though her heart ached. "Not if I can help it. You are safe with me, Thomas." Yet even as she said it, doubt gnawed at her. A loud knock rattled the door. Amelia stiffened. When she opened it, she found Richard standing there, his expression smug, a constable by his side. "My dear niece," Richard said smoothly, "I am afraid things have become most serious. The inspector believes further inquiry is necessary. It would be best if you cooperated." The constable stepped forward, his tone firm. "Miss Rowe, I must ask you to come with us to answer some questions regarding your father's medicine." Amelia's heart thumped wildly. "You cannot truly think I had anything to do with his death." Richard gave a theatrical sigh, pressing a hand to his chest. "None of us wish it to be true. But when accounts are missing funds, when medicine bottles show irregularities, what are we to conclude?" Her knees nearly buckled. Missing funds. Irregularities. Richard was weaving a net around her, tightening it strand by strand. Thomas leapt to his feet. "It's not Amelia," he cried, his voice breaking. "She loved grandfather more than anything." "You know she did." Richard's smile hardened. "Children do not understand such matters. Be still, boy." Amelia placed a protective arm around Thomas. She knew she could not resist the constable's order. But in her chest, a fierce determination grew. She would not let Richard destroy her father's name, nor her own. Somehow, she would prove the truth. As the constable led her away, Richard's eyes glittered with triumph. Yet Amelia noticed something strange. Beneath his coat sleeve, a small tear revealed a fragment of silver chain. Her father's chain. The watch. She clenched her fists, fire rushing through her veins. Richard had the proof, and if she could not reclaim it, all hope would be lost. The constable led Amelia through the narrow cobbled streets of the village to the small brick police station. The air smelt of rain-soaked earth, and each step felt heavier than the last. Thomas had been left in the care of a kindly neighbor, though Amelia's heart ached to be separated from him. Inside the dimly lit office, Inspector Whitcomb awaited her. He sat behind a scarred wooden desk, spectacles perched low on his nose. His expression was stern but not unkind. "Miss Rowe," he began, steepling his fingers, "your uncle has raised serious concerns. He claims your father's medication was altered, and that financial records suggest irregular withdrawals under your name." Amelia's eyes widened. "That is impossible. I never touched my father's accounts." The inspector watched her closely. "Yet the papers appear convincing. Perhaps you can explain." Amelia hesitated, torn between silence and confession. Finally she leaned forward, her voice trembling. "Inspector, my father left me a message, hidden in his watch. It warned me of Richard. He wrote that Richard forged documents and stole from us. But last night, someone broke into my house. The watch has been taken." Whitcomb's brow furrowed. "Are you certain of this? A watch hidden with such a letter could change matters considerably." "Yes," Amelia whispered urgently. "Richard has it. I saw the chain beneath his sleeve this very morning." The inspector leaned back, silent for a long moment. His eyes narrowed. "If what you say is true, then your uncle is playing a dangerous game. But you must understand, without the letter, I cannot simply accuse him." Amelia's shoulders slumped, despair washing over her. Richard was tightening the noose, and she had nothing left to fight with. Then, Whitcomb lowered his voice. "Still, I am not blind. Richard's manner is too polished, too eager. He reminds me of men I have dealt with before, liars who believe their schemes flawless. I will look deeper, Miss Rowe. But you must tread carefully. For if he suspects I doubt him, he may strike harder than ever." Amelia lifted her gaze, hope flickering faintly in her chest. She had found at least one ally. But outside the station, Richard stood waiting beneath the dripping eaves, a smile curling at the corners of his mouth. His gloved hand tapped against his coat, and Amelia could hear the faintest metallic clink with each tap. The watch was there, hidden, and with it her father's last words. 2 days later, Richard announced a gathering at Grantham Manor, his sprawling estate on the edge of the village. He claimed it was to discuss the settlement of Reverend Rowe's affairs, but Amelia knew better. It was a performance, staged to corner her. The villagers whispered as Amelia arrived under the watchful escort of Inspector Whitcomb. The manor's great hall blazed with candlelight, its high beams casting shadows that seemed to creep along the walls. Richard stood at the head of the long table, a golden goblet in his hand, his expression one of false sorrow. "Friends," he began, his voice smooth, "we are gathered to resolve the most unfortunate business of my brother's estate. It pains me to suspect foul play, yet justice must be done." His eyes slid towards Amelia, cold and triumphant. Murmurs rippled through the room. Amelia felt every gaze upon her like a weight. Her throat tightened, but she forced herself to remain steady. Richard produced a bundle of papers and laid them on the table. "These are the records," he declared. Withdrawals from the vicarage account, signed in Amelia's own hand. Bottles of medicine altered, proof enough that she sought to hasten her father's end for the sake of inheritance. Gasps filled the hall. Whitcomb's brow darkened, but he remained silent, watching. Amelia's pulse hammered. She wanted to shout that it was all forged, that her father's letter told the truth, but without the watch she had no proof. Then, Richard reached into his coat. With deliberate care, he drew out the silver watch, holding it aloft for all to see. "And here," he announced, "my brother's watch, found in my niece's drawer, hidden away like a guilty secret." The hall erupted in shocked whispers. Amelia's breath caught. He had the watch, yet he had not opened it. He did not know what it contained. Whitcomb leaned subtly towards Amelia, his voice low. "Hold fast, Miss Rowe. If he reveals what lies inside, the truth may undo him." Amelia gripped the edge of the table, her mind whirling. She could feel the eyes of the village upon her, waiting, judging. Richard placed the watch upon the table with a theatrical flourish, his smile curling. "Shall we see," he said, "what secrets my brother wished to conceal?" He snapped open the lid. The hall fell into breathless silence as the silver lid of the watch snapped open. Richard smirked, expecting only to find Amelia's shame hidden within. But then a faint crackle sounded, followed by a soft mechanical whir. A voice filled the air, clear, weary, and unmistakably that of Reverend Rowe. "My beloved daughter, Amelia. If you are hearing this, I am gone. You must know, my death was no natural passing. My brother Richard sought my end. He tampered with my medicine and plotted to seize what was mine. Trust only the watch. Within it lies my confession, and with it, the truth." Gasps echoed around the room. Richard froze, his face blanching as though struck. The goblet slipped from his grasp, clattering to the floor. "No!" he barked, his composure fracturing. "Lies! Trickery! This is her doing, witchcraft!" But the voice continued, steady and undeniable. "I place my faith in Inspector Whitcomb to guard my child, and in the honor of my parish to hear me. Let not Richard's greed prosper." The whirring ceased, and silence reclaimed the hall. For a moment, no one moved. The villagers exchanged glances, the weight of Reverend Rowe's words pressing heavily upon them. Whitcomb stepped forward, his voice low but commanding. "You have heard it for yourselves. This watch holds more truth than any forged paper. Richard Rowe, you are accused not by me, nor by your niece, but by your own brother's dying voice." Richard staggered back, his hand trembling as it hovered near the watch. His eyes darted wildly, searching for an escape, for a defense. None came. Amelia's chest heaved, a strange mix of triumph and terror surging through her. The truth was laid bare, but would Richard allow himself to be undone so easily? With a sudden snarl, Richard overturned the table, sending candles toppling and papers scattering like startled birds. The hall erupted into chaos. Villagers screamed, chairs scraped, and shadows leapt as flames licked at the cloth. Richard lunged for the watch. Richard's hand closed around the silver watch, his grip white-knuckled with desperation. Amelia cried out, lunging forward, but he swung his arm wildly, striking her aside. She fell against the overturned table, her breath knocked from her chest. The hall was in uproar. Villagers shouted and scattered as the fire spread along the tablecloth. The scent of burning wax filled the air. Inspector Whitcomb fought his way through the chaos, but Richard, like a beast cornered, clutched the watch close to his chest and drew a blade from his coat. "No one will take this from me," he roared, his voice breaking. "Not her, not you, not even the grave." The villagers froze at the sight of the knife. Amelia, gasping for breath, staggered to her feet. Her eyes locked on Richard's trembling hand. She saw in him not power, but madness. Whitcomb raised his voice above the din. "Richard, surrender. The watch has spoken, and your brother's words cannot be silenced. Do not damn yourself further." But Richard only laughed, a terrible, fractured sound. "Silenced? Then I shall silence it myself." He raised the watch high as if to smash it against the stone wall. Amelia shrieked, throwing herself forward in one last desperate attempt. Her hands closed around his arm, nails digging into his flesh. For a moment they struggled, uncle and niece, bound by blood yet torn apart by greed. The knife flashed, the watch trembled, the fire crackled ever louder. Then came a sharp crack, the sound of shattering glass. The watch slipped from Richard's grasp, spinning through the smoke-filled air. Time seemed to slow as every eye followed its descent. It struck the ground and rolled to a stop at the feet of Inspector Whitcomb. Richard's face twisted in fury. "No!" he bellowed, lunging toward it. But Whitcomb was faster. He planted his boot upon the watch, his pistol drawn, the barrel leveled at Richard's chest. "Enough," Whitcomb growled. "Take one more step, and you seal your fate." The hall fell silent once more. The fire crackled, the villagers held their breath, and Amelia, trembling, wondered if justice had finally caught up with her uncle, or if Richard still had one last act of violence left to give. Richard stood frozen, his chest heaving, eyes locked on the pistol aimed at him. The fire hissed and spat, casting shadows across his contorted face. For a heartbeat, no one dared move. Then, with a guttural cry, Richard dropped the knife and sank to his knees. His hands clutched at his head, his voice breaking into sobs. "It was mine, it was always meant to be mine," he muttered, rocking back and forth like a broken man. Inspector Whitcomb signaled to the constables, who surged forward and wrenched Richard's arms behind his back. The steel bite of handcuffs echoed through the smoky hall. Amelia slumped against the wall, her chest rising and falling in ragged breaths. She watched as Richard was hauled to his feet, his proud shoulders bowed, his gaze empty of the arrogance that had once ruled him. For the first time, he looked defeated. The inspector lifted the battered watch from the floor and pressed it gently into Amelia's hand. Its face was cracked, but the mechanism inside still ticked with stubborn resolve. "Your father's truth endures," Whitcomb said quietly. "And justice has prevailed." Tears welled in Amelia's eyes as she clutched the watch to her chest. Around her, the villagers slowly emerged from the haze of smoke and fear, murmuring in relief. The fire was beaten down, the hall saved, and Richard Cartwright, the man who had once sought to crush them all beneath his greed, was led away in chains. As the heavy doors closed behind him, Amelia stepped outside into the cool night air. The stars shone above the Yorkshire hills, bright and eternal. She drew a deep breath, her heart finally lightened. Her father's watch ticked softly in her palm, no longer a burden but a reminder. A reminder of love, of truth, and of the strength to face even the darkest betrayal. For Amelia, the time of fear had ended. The time of healing had begun.